a story that began on September 18th, 2025. On that day, two seemingly impossible things happened within just 72 hours of each other. The first was a tremor, a deep, resonant groan from the very bones of our planet. The Earth shuddered. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake ripped through the cold waters off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, sending shockwaves of unease across the vast Pacific Ring of Fire. It was the latest in a devastating sequence, a planetary fever that had been building since the long days of July. But this was only half of the dialogue. Just 3 days earlier, while the tectonic plates were still locked in their strained and silent embrace, our world had been struck by something entirely different. Not from below, but from above. An invisible wave of energy, a G3 geomagnetic storm, had washed over us. It was a tempest born from our own star, the Sun, as it began to awaken from a long, 11-year slumber. The sky burned with unseen fire, the Earth's magnetic shield groaning under the strain of a celestial onslaught. An earthquake from the deep and a storm from the heavens, separated by a mere breath in cosmic time. Coincidence? Perhaps. A simple roll of the universe's dice. Science offers us the comfort of probability, the solace of random chance. But in this grand, unfolding narrative, there was a third player, a silent observer whose presence turned coincidence into a profound and unsettling question. Its name is 3I Atlas, a designated visitor from the chilling, starless void between suns. It is a traveler currently hurtling toward the heart of our solar system, cloaked in a ghostly veil of plasma, a coma so vast it stretches half the diameter of our sun itself, and it is growing larger with each passing day. An earthquake, a solar storm, and an interstellar messenger. 3 cosmic events, converging in a single, narrow window of time. For better or for worse, we are all witnesses to something that has never been observed in the entirety of recorded human history. A story is being written in the language of physics and fire, of geology and gravity, and it forces us to ask, are these extraordinary events just a spectacular display of random chance, or are they weaving a pattern, a message far more interconnected than our science yet dares to admit? Stay with me on this journey, this exploration into the heart of a cosmic mystery. What follows is not just a retelling of facts and figures, but an invitation to wonder, to question, and to listen to the story the universe is telling us. And as you listen, perhaps in the quiet of your own evening, tucked away in your corner of the world, I find myself wondering where and when these words are finding you. It's a beautiful thought that we are all connected in this moment of shared curiosity. If you feel moved, take a moment to leave a comment below with your city and the date and time you are joining this journey. It creates a wonderful, invisible map of consciousness, a network of listeners all tuning into the same cosmic frequency, all asking the same questions. It reminds us that while we may feel small, together, our awareness is a powerful thing, and our shared journey begins with the most fundamental questions of all. For millennia, humanity has looked up at the stars and whispered these questions into the darkness. But now, it feels as if the universe might be whispering back. The celestial stage is so crowded, the events so precisely timed, that it forces us to reconsider the very nature of our existence. It compels us to ask, in the face of this cosmic drama, why are we here? What is our purpose in this grand design? And what, ultimately, is our destiny? These are not questions for science alone, nor for faith alone. They are human questions, born from the awe-inspiring and sometimes terrifying beauty of the cosmos. The events of late 2025 are more than just astronomical phenomena. They are a mirror, reflecting our deepest queries back at us. Let us return to that moment of planetary shiver. The September 18th earthquake was no ordinary tremor. It was a powerful aftershock, a reply to an even greater event that had occurred just 7 weeks earlier. On July 29th, an 8.8 magnitude monster, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded by instruments, had torn the seafloor apart in the same region. That initial quake was so immense, it triggered Pacific-wide tsunami warnings, with detection systems from Hawaii to Chile placed on high alert, monitoring for waves that could reshape coastlines thousands of kilometers away. The Earth was restless, its deep energies still reverberating from that cataclysmic release. Any seismologist will tell you, quite rightly, that these events are driven by tectonic forces, the slow, grinding dance of continental plates, a choreography that has been shaping our world for billions of years. They are right. But what if that is not the whole story? What if these internal pressures, these terrestrial stresses, can be influenced, nudged, or even coaxed into release by forces from beyond our world? This is where the timing becomes so exquisitely, unnervingly perfect. The G3 geomagnetic storm that struck on September 14th and 15th was not born from a dramatic solar flare or a colossal coronal mass ejection. It was something more subtle, more persistent. It was delivered by what is known as a coronal hole high-speed stream. Imagine, for a moment, the sun's magnetic field lines usually looping back upon themselves, instead opening up like the petals of a cosmic flower. This opening creates a direct highway, a channel for charged particles to escape the sun and race towards us at speeds exceeding 600 kilometers per second. It is not a sudden punch, but a sustained pressure, a constant, powerful wind that presses against our planet's magnetic shield for days on end. This is the energy that bathed our world just 72 hours before the ground in Kamchatka gave way. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Space Weather Prediction Center tracked this event meticulously, noting the increase in solar wind streams and geomagnetic disturbances that lit up the auroras, painting the night sky with ethereal light as far south as Colorado. Our ancient ancestors, without the tools of modern science, would have seen this as nothing less than a portent. They would have read the dancing lights in the sky and the shaking of the ground as a divine language. In their wisdom, they understood that the heavens and the earth were connected. The King James Bible, in the book of Genesis, tells us that the lights in the firmament of the heaven were put there not just to give light upon the earth, but for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. For signs, we, in our modern age, have learned to read the scientific signature of these signs. We call them auroras, solar winds, tectonic shifts. But in our quest for empirical data, have we forgotten how to read the message? When the earth groans and the heavens glow with unusual fire, it is hard not to hear the echoes of another ancient text. In the Gospel of Luke, it is foretold that there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. While we are not speaking of prophecy here, we are speaking of a deep, archetypal pattern that resonates within the human soul, a pattern that recognizes a profound and sacred connection between the world above and the world below. And into this potent mix of celestial and terrestrial power steps our silent traveler, 3I Atlas. Its official designation, C/2025 None, belies its extraordinary nature. It is only the third confirmed interstellar visitor to our solar system. The first, Oumuamua, baffled astronomers with its strange, elongated shape and mysterious acceleration. The second, Borisov, was more recognizably a comet. But Atlas is something else entirely. It is already active, developing its immense, sun-sized coma at a distance where most comets remain frozen and dormant. Think of what this means. An object, born in an alien star system, carrying the chemistry and ices of a stellar nursery we will never see, is creating a bubble of activity so massive it could swallow planets whole. And it is doing this while still far from the sun's most intense heat. This is not just a comet, it is a presence, It has entered our heliosphere, our sun's domain, and has become part of an electrical circuit that spans billions of cubic kilometers. Its very existence here, now, during our sun's awakening and our planet's restlessness, adds a layer of mystery that is almost poetic in its perfection. This is the triptych of cosmic events. A restless Earth, its tectonic stresses primed and ready, still trembling from a recent wound. An active sun, awakened and breathing streams of high-energy particles across the solar system. And an interstellar messenger, a wildcard from the great unknown, dragging its enormous plasma cloud into the heart of this volatile environment. The stage is set, the actors are in place, and the first act of this cosmic drama has just begun. If you wish to continue on this journey with us, to follow this story as it unfolds week by week, consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That way, you won't miss a single chapter in this exploration of the unknown. The question is, are we merely spectators, or are we part of the story? The story of our world in the autumn of 2025 does not truly begin on Earth. It begins 93 million miles away, in the heart of a thermonuclear furnace that has governed our existence since the dawn of time. For years, it had been quiet, its breathing slow and steady, its surface marked by a relative calm. But in the months leading up to that fateful September, the king had awoken. The sun, our sun, was stirring from its slumber, and the entire solar system was beginning to feel the heat of its returning fury. This awakening has a name, a designation given to it by our scientists: Solar Cycle 25. An 11-year rhythm of calm and chaos, a cosmic heartbeat that we have only recently begun to understand. But this cycle was different. The numbers, the cold, hard data streaming back from our unblinking satellites, told a story that was both fascinating and unsettling. Sunspot numbers, the dark, swirling pores on the sun's face that betray its magnetic turmoil, had climbed steadily throughout 2024 and 2025, reaching levels that exceeded many of the official forecasts. The Solar Dynamics Observatory, our ever-vigilant eye in the sky, sent back daily portraits of a star that was not merely active, but writhing with a magnetic complexity we had never before witnessed in such detail. Vast regions of its surface, each one large enough to swallow our Earth dozens of times over, had become tangled nests of invisible force lines, twisting and straining against each other, until, with unimaginable violence, they would snap. Each solar flare, a single flash of this stellar rage, releases energy equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons detonating in the same instant. The largest of these, the X-class events, are titanic explosions that hurl charged particles and electromagnetic radiation across the solar system at nearly the speed of light. They are the most dramatic expressions of the sun's power, the roar of the lion. But the true story of Solar Cycle 25's peak was not just in these singular, spectacular eruptions. It was in the fundamental change of our star's entire character, its very personality. The solar wind, the constant stream of particles flowing from the sun, had become erratic and wild. It no longer flowed as a steady river, but as a turbulent, unpredictable sea, switching between the high-speed streams that gushed from coronal holes and the slower, denser material that boiled off from the active regions. The heliospheric current sheet, that vast, spiraling skirt of electric current that extends from the sun's equator out past the farthest planets, became more warped and complex. Imagine a colossal, spinning sheet of silk, once flowing gracefully, now rippling and twisting in a gale, creating pockets of electromagnetic turbulence throughout the entire inner solar system. This was the environment, the cosmic ocean that our planet was sailing through. This was the storm into which our interstellar visitor, 3I Atlas, was making its final approach. For thousands of years, we have looked to the sun with a mixture of reverence and fear. We have worshipped it as a god, a life-giver, the source of all warmth and growth. The ancient psalmist, gazing up at the heavens from the quiet hills of Judea, wrote words that still echo with a profound truth. In the King James Bible, the 19th Psalm begins, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork." In that single line lies the history of human awe. Our ancestors saw the sun's unwavering power, the celestial mechanics of day and night, and they saw in it the hand of a creator, a divine glory that was both beautiful and terrifying. We, in our modern age, believe we have moved beyond such poetic interpretations. We have replaced the language of glory and handiwork with the precise vocabulary of science. We speak of thermonuclear fusion, of magnetohydrodynamics, of particle physics. We have measured the sun's temperature. We have analyzed its chemical composition. We have mapped its magnetic fields. And yet, in all our measuring and all our analysis, we have not diminished its glory. We have amplified it. We have discovered a power at its core that is more vast, more complex, and more terrifyingly beautiful than our ancestors could have ever possibly conceived. The fury of the heavens is not a myth. It is a measurable, physical reality. And the G3 geomagnetic storm of mid-September was a perfect testament to this reality. It was a direct consequence of the sun's awakened state, a clear message sent across the vastness of space. As we noted, this particular storm was not the result of a sudden, explosive flare. Its origin was more subtle and in many ways more interesting. It was born from a persistent, gaping wound in the sun's atmosphere, a coronal hole. These are not holes in the conventional sense, but regions where the sun's magnetic field does not loop back onto itself. Instead, the field lines open outward, shooting straight into space, creating a cosmic fire hose. For days, this opening, designated by solar physicists as coronal hole 1316, had been rotating into a position facing Earth. It was a vast, dark patch on the solar corona, visible only in the extreme ultraviolet light captured by our satellites. And from it, a high-speed stream of solar wind poured forth, a relentless river of protons and electrons traveling at speeds of over 600 kilometers per second. To try and visualize this, imagine a particle stream so swift it could cross the continental United States in less than 10 seconds, and so wide it could hold a dozen Earths abreast. This was the invisible river that flowed toward our planet. When this stream finally collided with Earth's magnetosphere on September 14th, it was not a singular impact. It was a sustained, crushing pressure. For more than 48 hours, this high-speed wind buffeted and compressed our planet's magnetic shield. The result, for those on the ground, was twofold. First, there was the beauty. The immense influx of energy supercharged the auroras. The northern and southern lights, usually confined to the polar regions, pushed dramatically toward the equator. Observers across the northern United States, from Washington to Maine, and even as far south as the Carolinas, were treated to breathtaking displays of celestial curtains, shimmering sheets of green and violet fire that danced silently across the night sky. It was the heavens declaring their glory in the most spectacular fashion. But beneath the beauty, there was a hidden effect, a more invasive consequence of this solar fury. The storm induced powerful electrical currents in the very crust of the Earth. These are called telluric currents, and they are a well-documented phenomenon. As the planet's magnetic field fluctuates wildly under the solar assault, it generates electricity in conductive materials, and the Earth's rock and water are conductive. Our planet itself became part of a vast electrical circuit. These currents, flowing invisibly through the ground beneath our feet, are not insignificant. They follow geological structures, seeking out paths of least resistance, often concentrating along mineral deposits and, most intriguingly, along deep fault zones. Utility companies and pipeline operators are acutely aware of these currents. They monitor them carefully during solar storms because they can surge into our technological infrastructure with devastating effects. They can overload power transformers, causing cascading blackouts that could plunge entire regions into darkness. They can accelerate the corrosion of thousands of miles of metal pipelines, silently weakening the arteries of our industrial civilization. The storm of September 2025 caused minor fluctuations in power grids and communication systems, a warning shot. It was a reminder that the same energy that paints the sky with beautiful light can also cripple the technologies upon which our modern world depends. We had received a more serious lesson just months earlier, in the first half of 2025, when a brief but powerful G4, or severe, storm had struck. That event was a dress rehearsal for the vulnerabilities of our hyper-connected age. Airlines were forced to reroute polar flights to avoid the complete loss of high-frequency radio communications. GPS navigation systems, which rely on stable signals from space, suffered from degraded accuracy, a minor inconvenience for a driver in a city, but a potentially life-threatening issue for precision industries like aviation and shipping. This is the paradox of our time. We have built a glass kingdom of intricate technology, a world that runs on satellites and microscopic circuits, yet it all exists within the domain of a star whose ancient, raw power can shatter our fragile creations with a single, ill-timed breath. The fury of the heavens is not an abstract concept. It has real, tangible consequences. The power unleashed by our awakening sun is not merely a subject for scientific study. It is a force of nature that we must learn to live with. And this brings us back to the heart of our mystery, to the cosmic triptych of September. We have now examined the first two players in detail: a restless, wounded Earth, its tectonic plates creaking under immense strain, and a furious, awakened sun, bathing the solar system in a turbulent sea of electromagnetic energy. The power of the sun is the engine of this story. It is the active principle, the force that is changing the environment for all the other players. Its energy is the catalyst that interacts with every other system, from the largest planet to the smallest dust mote. When this sustained, powerful solar wind washed over our planet, it did more than just create beautiful auroras. It sent electrical currents deep into the planetary crust. It bathed the very fault lines of the Ring of Fire in a new and dynamic electromagnetic environment. Was this enough to provide the final, infinitesimal nudge needed to unlock a fault that was already strained to its breaking point? Mainstream science remains deeply skeptical, and for good reason. The forces of tectonics are monumental, and the energy from a solar storm, while significant, is thought to be many orders of magnitude smaller. But the question of timing, that exquisite 72-hour window, stubbornly remains. We are not dealing with simple cause and effect, but with a complex, interconnected system. The sun's fury is not a hammer, but a vibration, a powerful, resonant frequency that propagates through the entire solar system. And sometimes, if a system is already tuned to a point of critical tension, even a subtle vibration can be enough to trigger a catastrophic release. The fury of the heavens had been unleashed, and as you contemplate this immense, silent storm, it makes me wonder where you are right now, within this grand environment. In what corner of the world are these words finding you, and what time is it on your clock as you join me in this shared moment of wonder? If you feel a connection, leave a comment with your city and your time. It's a beautiful way to see the map of our collective curiosity come to life, stretching across time zones and continents. The question that remained was how the Earth, and its mysterious interstellar visitor, would respond to the song of its fire. While the sun roared, its fury, a declaration of power written in plasma and light, something else was moving through the darkness. It moved in a profound and patient silence, a silence born from a journey that had lasted for millions of years, across gulfs of space, so vast and so empty that our minds can barely conceive of them. This was the third player in our cosmic drama, the true anomaly, the whisper that contrasted with the sun's shout and the Earth's groan. This was the messenger, 3I Atlas. And to understand the story unfolding in 2025, we must first attempt to understand the nature of this visitor, for it is not of our world, it is not of our Sunday. It is a fragment of another creation, a physical message from a star system whose light may have died out long before humanity ever looked to the heavens in wonder. The name itself, 3I Atlas, is a testament to its rarity. The Atlas comes from the telescope network that first spotted it, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a set of robotic eyes that ceaselessly scan the sky for objects on a collision course with Earth. But the most important part of its name is the 3I. The I stands for interstellar, and the 3 tells us that this is only the third confirmed object of its kind to ever enter our celestial home. We are not a lonely port. We are simply a destination that is very, very rarely visited. Its predecessors were strange enough. The first, 1I Oumuamua, which swept through our system in 2017, remains a profound enigma. It was a dark, reddish, cigar-shaped object that tumbled oddly through space and accelerated in a way we still cannot fully explain, leaving a trail of tantalizing and unanswered questions. The second, 2I divided by Borisov, which arrived in 2019, was more familiar. It behaved much like the comets from our own system's distant icy reservoir, the Oort cloud. It was a comforting sight, a reassurance that the basic laws of cometary physics were perhaps universal. But 3I Atlas is neither a complete enigma like Oumuamua, nor a familiar cousin like Borisov. It falls somewhere in between, in a category of its own, a perfect blend of the recognizable and the utterly extraordinary, and that is what makes it so deeply compelling. When its trajectory was first calculated, astronomers knew at once it was a foreigner. Its path through space was a clear hyperbola, its speed too great, its angle of approach all wrong. This was not an object caught in the sun's gentle gravitational embrace. This was a cosmic bullet, fired from the depths of interstellar space, destined to pass through our system only once before continuing its lonely journey back into the infinite dark. But the first true hint of its profound strangeness was not in its path, but in its behavior. Most comets native to our solar system are like hibernating bears. They remain frozen, dormant, and inert until they cross a certain threshold, typically the orbit of Jupiter, where the sun's warmth is finally strong enough to stir them from their slumber. 3I Atlas, however, began to stir while it was still in the profound cold of the outer solar system. It began to breathe. At a distance where solar heating should have been little more than a faint caress, this interstellar visitor was already showing signs of life, developing the ghostly cloud of gas and dust that we call a coma. This was the first clue that the object was made of different stuff, that the ices locked within its heart were not the familiar water ice that dominates our own comets. Spectroscopic analysis, the art of reading the light that shines through this ghostly cloud, soon confirmed it. While our comets are mostly frozen water, with traces of other compounds, Atlas showed a composition fantastically rich in carbon dioxide. This makes a strange kind of sense. It is a chemical signature of its birthplace. In the bitter, absolute cold between the stars, carbon dioxide freezes solid, while other, more common ices might have been scoured away by cosmic rays or other processes over millions of years. It was carrying with it a sample of the chemistry of the Great Void. But this unusual composition only set the stage for the true revelation. The feature of this messenger that challenges our very sense of scale and proportion. The heart of the object, its solid nucleus, is estimated to be a relatively modest size, perhaps 3 to 6 kilometers across the size of a small mountain. And yet, this mountain of alien ice and rock was producing a structure of such monumental proportions that the numbers begin to lose their meaning. The latest measurements, confirmed by the Hubble Space Telescope, indicate that the gaseous envelope surrounding 3I Atlas, its coma, extends for at least 348,000 kilometers from its center. This creates a roughly spherical cloud with a diameter of nearly 700,000 kilometers. Let us pause and try to comprehend that scale. The planet Earth has a diameter of less than 13,000 kilometers. You could fit nearly 50 Earths, side by side, across the width of this visitor's ghostly veil. Our own sun, the fiery king whose fury we have just described, has a diameter of about 1.4 million kilometers. This means that the coma of this tiny, mountain-sized object from another star spans roughly half the width of our sun itself. It is a feat of cosmic physics that is difficult to overstate. It is like watching a single grain of sand produce a cloud the size of a mountain. It is an efficiency of output that defies our conventional models. This is not just a comet, this is a phenomenon. It is a structure that rivals the largest objects in our solar system in sheer size, created not by the crushing force of gravity that holds a star together, but by the gentle sublimation of exotic ices under the faint warmth of a distant Sunday. And the strangeness did not end with its size. Extended observations revealed another subtle, deeply puzzling anomaly. Most comets develop comas that are relatively symmetrical, a soft, round glow centered on the nucleus. But the light from 3I Atlas was not symmetrical. Astronomers noted what they call forward brightening. The brightest, densest regions of its gaseous envelope appeared slightly ahead of the nucleus along its orbital path. It was as if the object was not simply coasting through space and shedding material, but was actively leading with its light, its outgassing patterns driven by a complex interplay of rotation and surface, features unlike anything commonly seen in our local comet population. This is the portrait of our visitor, a traveler from an unknown star, made of unfamiliar chemistry that woke up too early, and upon waking, created a structure of impossible scale that glows in a strange, asymmetrical way. This is not just a piece of debris. This is a profound and unsettling mystery. In the ancient world, when something appeared in the heavens that defied all known rules, it was called a portent, a miracle, a message. The word angel comes from the Greek word angelos, which simply means messenger. A messenger does not always arrive with a voice or a written scroll. Sometimes, the messenger is the message. Its very existence, its form, its substance that is the communication. And what might be the message of 3I Atlas? Perhaps its message is a lesson in cosmic humility. For centuries, we have built our models of the universe based on what we can see from our small corner of the Milky Way. We have assumed, with some justification, that the laws of physics and chemistry are universal, but Atlas arrives as a quiet but powerful rebuttal to our certainty. It is a physical testament to the fact that the universe is not homogeneous. Other star systems may have different chemical compositions, different evolutionary histories, and may produce objects that operate under variations of physical law that we have not yet imagined. The Book of Job, in the King James Bible, is a long and powerful meditation on this very theme. It is the story of a righteous man trying to understand the seemingly chaotic and unjust nature of his suffering, and by extension, the universe. At the climax of the story, God finally answers Job, not with an explanation, but with a series of questions designed to reveal the profound gap between human understanding and divine creation. From the whirlwind, the voice asks, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding." He continues, "Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth?" These are not questions meant to be answered. They are questions meant to induce a state of awe and humility. They are a reminder that we are inhabitants of a creation, not its masters. And now, in the year 2025, a physical object has arrived in our heavens that seems to be asking us the very same questions. 3I Atlas is the whirlwind. It asks us, "Knowest thou the ordinances of a heaven born from another star? Can you bind the influences of an object whose chemistry is alien to you? Can you explain the dominion of a tiny nucleus that casts a shadow half the size of a sun?" Its arrival could not be more perfectly timed for this lesson in humility. It has come during the peak of our sun's activity, providing it with a dynamic and turbulent environment to interact with. It has become an interstellar probe, not one of our own making, but one sent to us by the cosmos itself. Its massive, electrically active coma is a net dragged through the solar wind, sampling the magnetic fields, the particle densities, and the plasma temperatures of our heliosphere in a way we have never been able to study before. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope tracks its chemical evolution, while the Solar Orbiter mission measures the solar wind that Atlas is flying through, creating a controlled experiment in plasma physics on an impossible scale. This silent messenger carries no scripture. It offers no commandments. Its revelation is written in the language of carbon dioxide sublimation rates and magnetohydrodynamics. The message is simple. The universe is larger, stranger, and more magnificent than your current models allow. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophies. It is a humbling message, but also an exhilarating one. It reminds us that we are still at the very beginning of our journey of understanding. And so, the third player takes its place on the stage. It is not loud and furious like the Sunday. It is not grounded and trembling like the Earth. It is the question mark. It is the unknown variable, the emissary from the abyss. As it continues its silent, inexorable approach toward its closest encounter with our Sun at the end of October, it carries with it the potential for profound discovery. The messenger is about to meet the fire. And what is revealed when an object born of the interstellar cold finally passes through the heart of our Sun's dominion may forever change our understanding of our place in the cosmos. We have spoken of the fury of the heavens and of a silent messenger from the void. But now we must turn our gaze away from the distant fire and the interstellar dark and look down beneath our own feet into the heart of our own world. For the story of September 2025 is as much a terrestrial tale as it is a cosmic one. It is a story about the profound and terrifying power that slumbers not between the stars but within the very rock and mantle of the planet we call home. To truly understand the tremor that shook Kamchatka on September 18th, we must first travel back 7 weeks to a moment when the Earth did not just tremble, it roared. On July 29th, 2025, at 14 hours, 55 minutes and 10 seconds, Coordinated Universal Time, the seafloor off the coast of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula ceased to be solid ground. In a period of less than 3 minutes, a fault zone that had been locked in a silent, agonizing embrace for decades, an embrace of unimaginable pressure, finally let go. The energy released was not something that can be easily comprehended. It was the equivalent of 32 billion tons of TNT, a force so colossal, so fundamentally violent, that it did more than just move the ground. It literally, measurably, altered the rotation of our planet, shortening the length of that day by a few precious microseconds. It was a magnitude 8.8 earthquake, a true monster, one of the most powerful seismic events that humanity has ever had the capacity to record. Within minutes of this deep planetary scream, a second, equally terrifying consequence began to unfold. Humanity's electronic nervous system, our network of deep ocean sentinels, sprang into action. The Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis Network, the DART buoys, scattered across the vast Pacific, began to register the passage of an invisible wave, a pressure anomaly, racing through the water at the speed of a jetliner, nearly 800 kilometers per hour. High above, NASA's satellites, using radar altimetry to measure the precise height of the ocean's surface, confirmed the buoy's warnings. They saw the sea itself bulge upwards, with wave heights exceeding 3 meters even in the deep ocean, a vast dome of displaced water carrying enough kinetic energy to level coastal cities thousands of kilometers away. The roar from the heart of the Earth had given birth to a monster of the sea. This event was not, in the grand scheme of geology, a surprise. The Kamchatka Peninsula is a scar on the face of our planet. It is a place where the Earth's inner turmoil becomes brutally visible. It sits atop one of the world's most active subduction zones, a colossal, slow-motion collision that has been underway for eons. Here, the immense Pacific Plate, the very floor of the world's largest ocean, is diving, inch by agonizing inch, beneath the neighboring Okhotsk Plate, at a rate of about 8 centimeters per year. Imagine two giants, pushing against each other for centuries, their strength building, the pressure mounting, the rock groaning and deforming under a strain that is almost beyond imagination. This is the source of the power. The collision is not a gentle slide. It is a violent, grinding descent that builds stress for generations, creating the perfect conditions for what seismologists call a megathrust earthquake. And when the locked section of that fault finally gave way on July 29th, the overlying plate, which had been bent downwards like a colossal spring, snapped back. It was this sudden, upward rebound of a vast section of the seafloor, hundreds of kilometers long, that displaced that enormous volume of seawater and sent the tsunami racing across the ocean. In the ancient scriptures, there are passages that speak of the very foundations of the world being shaken. The Book of Job, in its profound meditation on the power of creation, contains a line that captures this moment perfectly. He shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. On that day, in July, it was as if we were all given a brief, terrifying glimpse of those trembling pillars. But what truly set this event apart, what made it the crucial prelude to our September mystery, was not the main shock itself, but the echo that followed. It was the unprecedented clustering of large events in its wake. The earth did not simply roar once and then fall silent. It began to mutter. It trembled. By mid-September, the region had been rattled by more than 40 significant aftershocks above magnitude 6, each one a major earthquake in its own right. The magnitude 7.8 event of September 18th was not an isolated incident. It was simply the loudest voice in a continuous, unnerving conversation that the planet was having with itself. The ground beneath Kamchatka remained restless, its fault zones still twitching, adjusting, and groaning in response to the massive changes wrought by that July cataclysm. To understand why this clustering matters, you need to appreciate one of the most subtle and important concepts in seismology, the science of stress transfer. An earthquake does not simply release energy into the void and then disappear. It redistributes it. It is a profound and violent reorganization of the immense pressures within the Earth's crust. Imagine a complex web of tension. When one strand in that web snaps, the remaining strands are suddenly subjected to new and different forces. Areas along the fault that were previously stable suddenly find themselves under increased strain, their own breaking point brought terrifyingly closer. Other areas may fall into what is known as a stress shadow, where the probability of a quake temporarily decreases. The July 29th earthquake was not just a snap. It was the severing of a primary cable in this terrestrial web. The initial rupture zone extended for nearly 600 kilometers along the plate boundary, but the stress changes. It radiated outwards for much, much further. Computer models run by the United States Geological Survey, using a technique called Coulomb stress modeling, painted a stark picture. In the aftermath of the main shock, dozens of nearby fault segments, some of which had been quiet for years, had experienced a significant increase in their failure probability. The great monster had not slain the other dragons in the deep. It had awakened them. It had passed its stress, its tension, its burden, onto its neighbors. This is the mainstream and perfectly valid scientific explanation for the September 18th earthquake. It was a large and entirely expected aftershock, a direct and mechanical consequence of the stress changes from the July megathrust. The Earth was simply continuing its slow, violent process of finding a new equilibrium. And yet, this is where the story pivots. This is where the clean, mechanical explanation begins to feel incomplete, where it brushes up against the edge of a deeper, stranger possibility. Because in science, as in life, timing is everything. And the timing here as we know, raises the hair on the back of the neck. The September 18th earthquake, this powerful and predictable aftershock, occurred just 3 days after the peak of that sustained G3 geomagnetic storm. The Earth, in its most vulnerable and critically loaded state, its tectonic web already humming with transferred stress, was bathed for over 48 hours in a dynamic and turbulent electromagnetic field, its very crust coursing with induced electrical currents. Could this be mere coincidence? Absolutely. The laws of probability allow for such things. But is it not also possible that there exists a deeper connection between the electrical environment of our planet and the mechanical stresses that are waiting to be released within it? Let us be perfectly clear. The idea that space weather can trigger earthquakes remains highly controversial. As we have noted, the world's premier seismological organizations have found no statistically significant correlation. But the key phrase that is often debated in the more speculative corners of this science is triggering mechanism. No serious researcher suggests that a solar storm could create an earthquake out of nothing in a stable region of the Earth's crust. The energy is simply not there. The proposal is far more subtle. The question is whether these external electromagnetic effects, the induced telluric currents, the changes in atmospheric pressure from ionospheric heating, could provide the final, delicate nudge, the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, for a fault that is already loaded to 99.9% of its failure threshold. The Kamchatka Peninsula, in September 2025, was the very definition of a system loaded to its breaking point. It was not a stable region waiting for a cause. It was an unstable region, a wound, waiting for an excuse. The aftershock sequence was already underway, following well-established statistical patterns. But what makes the September 18th event so noteworthy is not that it occurred, but when it occurred, with such perfect timing relative to the peak of the solar disturbance. Our planet, in that moment, was not an isolated, mechanical system. It was a body under immense stress. Think of a human body when it is exhausted, overworked, and emotionally frayed. In such a state, it becomes far more susceptible to external influences. A minor infection, a sudden shock, a stressful event, things that a healthy, rested body might easily shrug off, can suddenly trigger a major illness. Is it possible that a planet can have a similar constitution? Is it possible that when the Earth's own internal systems are stretched to their limit, when its tectonic plates are groaning under redistributed stress, that it too becomes more sensitive to the subtle, energetic whispers of the cosmos? This is the roar from the heart of the Earth. It is not just the sound of rock breaking under pressure. It is the sound of a complex, interconnected system, a living planet that is being stressed from within and simultaneously bathed in a storm from without. Its pillars were already trembling from the great quake of July. Its fault lines were already singing with a new and dangerous tension. And as it hung in this delicate, fragile balance, the fury of the heavens washed over it. The roar that followed on September 18th may have been an inevitable aftershock, but its timing suggests that it may also have been an answer, a terrestrial response to a celestial call. The Earth had spoken, and its voice was a testament to its own deep, violent, and magnificent fragility. To comprehend the events of that extraordinary September, to even begin to grasp how a storm in the heavens could speak to a tremor in the deep, we must fundamentally alter our perception of the universe. We must abandon the old, comfortable image of the solar system as a vast, empty void with planets scattered like lonely marbles orbiting a distant star. This is a Newtonian vision, a clockwork universe of gravity and mechanics. But we are living in an electrical age, and we are beginning to discover that we inhabit an electrical universe. We must instead imagine the solar system as it truly is, a single, complex, and interconnected system filled with invisible rivers of charged particles woven together by vast and intricate magnetic fields. It is not empty space, it is a medium. It is a vast, cosmic circuit. In this vision, the sun is not merely a ball of fire, It is the power source, the colossal generator at the heart of the circuit. The planets are not just inert spheres of rock and gas. They are components, each with its own magnetic and electrical properties, acting like resistors, capacitors, and inductors in this grand, celestial machine. And the solar wind, that constant stream of particles we spoke of, is the current itself, the lifeblood of the entire system, carrying energy and information from the core all the way to the interstellar fringes. For centuries, mystics and esoteric traditions have spoken of subtle energies, of cosmic ethers, and invisible connections. Now, in the 21st century, our own plasma physicists are, in their own precise language, beginning to describe something remarkably similar. This brings us to the first part of our invisible mechanism, the nature of the current that flowed from the Sun in the days leading up to the September 18th earthquake. As we know, it was a high-speed stream from a coronal hole. But we must look closer at the peculiar characteristics of such a stream. When this river of particles gushes from an opening in the Sun's corona, it behaves in a very specific way. The velocity, the speed of the current, increases dramatically, soaring from a baseline of around 400 kilometers per second to well over 700. Simultaneously, the particle density, the thickness of the current, plummets. It drops precipitously, sometimes falling below one single proton per cubic centimeter. To place that in perspective, the air you are breathing right now contains roughly 25 quintillion molecules in that same cubic centimeter of space. Even the best, most perfect vacuums we can create in our most advanced laboratories on Earth are dense with matter compared to this solar wind stream. Some researchers have given this phenomenon a hauntingly descriptive name, the solar wind vacuum. It is not a true vacuum, of course, but it is a profound and sudden drop in the ambient pressure of the space around our planet. According to a controversial but compelling hypothesis, this sudden change in electrical pressure does something extraordinary to Earth's magnetosphere. Imagine our planet's magnetic shield as a bubble, inflated and held in place by the constant pressure of the normal solar wind. When this high-density wind is suddenly replaced by the low-density vacuum stream, the external pressure on the bubble drops. The bubble expands. This expansion is not a gentle, uniform process. It stretches and reconfigures the complex network of electrical currents that flow throughout our planet's magnetic environment, particularly in the delicate region where the magnetosphere couples with the ionosphere above our atmosphere. This cascade of electromagnetic effects, proponents argue, does not stop in the sky. It propagates all the way to the ground. The changes in the heavens induce new patterns in the telluric currents flowing through the Earth's crust. According to this theory, the solar wind vacuum does not push on the Earth, it pulls. It creates a kind of electromagnetic suction that could, potentially, be the final trigger for a geological system already under immense strain. Now, let us add the second layer of complexity to our invisible circuit. While this unusual current was flowing toward Earth, the components of the solar system were themselves moving into a rare and noteworthy configuration. On September 13th, 2025, just one day before the G3 storm began to rage, the planet Mercury reached a point in its orbit known as superior conjunction. This means that Mercury, the Sun, and the Earth formed a perfect, straight line through space, with Mercury positioned on the far side of the Sun from our perspective. The mainstream heliophysicist will tell you, quite correctly, that this alignment is gravitationally insignificant. Mercury is a tiny planet, and at that distance, 96 million kilometers away on the other side of the Sun, its gravitational pull on Earth is utterly negligible, far less than that of our own Moon. From a purely mechanical standpoint, its position should have no effect whatsoever on the solar wind conditions arriving at Earth. But what if we are not looking at a mechanical system? What if we are looking at an electrical one? In the electrical model of the solar system, a planetary alignment might do something far more subtle and significant. According to this alternative theory, when planets align, they can change the overall impedance of the heliospheric circuit. Think of it like plugging a new appliance into a complex electronic device. The overall resistance of the circuit changes, the current flow patterns shift, and the system responds in ways that can be difficult to predict. The alignment of Mercury, a planet with its own magnetic field and conductive core, directly within the circuit between the Sun and the Earth, could have theoretically altered the large-scale structure of the heliospheric current sheet. It might have created a resonance, a specific electrical pathway that focused or modulated the energy flowing from the Sunday. This could help explain why the resulting G3 storm was stronger than many forecasters had predicted. The raw material for the storm was already there, gushing from coronal hole 1316, but its interaction with Earth's magnetosphere may have been amplified or modified by the specific electrical configuration of the inner solar system at that precise moment. The current was high, and a planetary component had just clicked into a place that perhaps made the entire circuit more volatile, more conductive to chaos. We now have our theoretical chain of events, our invisible electrical cascade. A planetary alignment subtly modifies the electrical architecture of the solar system. Through this modified circuit flows a high-speed, low-density vacuum stream from the Sunday. This stream collides with Earth's magnetosphere, causing it to expand and triggering an unusually strong geomagnetic response. This response, in turn, induces powerful and erratic telluric currents in the conductive layers of the Earth's crust. And these currents, flowing through the already critically stressed fault zones of the Kamchatka Peninsula, provide the final, infinitesimal nudge needed to trigger a magnitude 7.8 earthquake. This is the proposed mechanism, a series of interconnected events, flowing from the cosmic to the terrestrial, all governed by the laws of electricity and magnetism, operating on a scale that beggars the imagination. Is it true? The honest answer is that we do not know. This is frontier science, a hypothesis that exists on the fringes of our current understanding. It is an attempt to draw a map of a hidden landscape, a landscape of invisible forces and subtle connections that we are only just beginning to perceive. This very act of seeking, of trying to map the unseen, is a deeply human, and one could even say a deeply spiritual endeavor. It is a modern manifestation of an ancient quest. In the Book of Proverbs, in the King James translation, there is a verse that beautifully encapsulates this entire scientific struggle. Chapter 25, verse 2 reads, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." This single, elegant line offers a profound insight into the relationship between faith and inquiry. It suggests that the universe is filled with concealed wonders, with mechanisms and truths that are deliberately hidden from plain sight. And the noblest calling, the honor of kings, is not to simply accept the mystery, but to engage with it, to search out the matter, to strive to understand the hidden workings of creation. The theory of the invisible cosmic circuit, controversial as it may be, is a perfect example of this search. It is humanity, in the 21st century, acting in the spirit of this ancient wisdom. We see the shaking of the earth and the fire in the sky, and instead of merely calling it the will of God, we seek to understand the very grammar of that will. We are attempting to trace the wiring diagram of the firmament. We are searching for the concealed thing, believing that in the search itself lies our honor, our purpose. This proposed electrical cascade, this invisible circuit, provides us with a potential language, a way to understand how the three great actors in our drama might be communicating. It is the syntax that could connect the sun's fiery pronouncements with the Earth's deep geological replies. It is the medium through which the silent interstellar messenger, 3I Atlas, must also travel. Its own immense electromagnetic presence, a new and unknown component being introduced into this already volatile system. We have looked at the sun's fury, the messenger's strangeness, and the Earth's fragility. Now, we have a possible, though unproven, framework for how they might be bound together. The map is not yet verified, the landscape still shrouded in mist, but for the first time, we have a path to follow, a circuit to trace, as we venture deeper into the heart of this cosmic mystery. If you believed that our three cosmic players, the furious sun, the fragile earth, and the silent interstellar messenger were performing this drama on an otherwise empty stage, then prepare to have your entire conception of this story expanded. For 3i Atlas, in its majestic and lonely journey, was not traveling alone. As astronomers turned their telescopes toward the heavens in the final months of 2025, they realized they were witnessing something that had not been seen in living memory. It was not a solo performance, nor a trio. It was a symphony. It was a grand, celestial parade. The inner solar system was becoming crowded with a host of visitors, a veritable swarm of comets, 7 distinct and remarkable objects, all converging on the same narrow window of time. This was not just a scientific curiosity. It was a fundamental shift in the narrative. The plot had thickened dramatically. What we had perceived as a sparse and minimalist play was revealing itself to be an epic production with a full cast of characters, each bringing its own unique mystery, its own strange beauty to the performance. To understand what is to come, we must first meet the full ensemble of this celestial drama, this grand procession that was assembling in the autumn sky. First, of course, there is our headline act, the star of the show, 3i Atlas. It is the interstellar heavyweight, the alien, the profound mystery whose presence initiated our entire inquiry. With its carbon dioxide-rich coma already spanning half the sun's diameter, it continued its silent, perplexing journey toward its closest approach to the sun on October 30th. It remains the central enigma, the visitor who defies our conventional physics, the benchmark against which all other strangeness is now measured. Then we have the one that could steal the show with its sheer, breathtaking beauty, Comet C/2025 R2 Swan. If Atlas is the mysterious protagonist, Swan is the spectacular ingenue. It was scheduled to make its closest approach to Earth around October 19th through the 21st, passing within a mere 0.26 astronomical units of our planet. That is roughly 1/4 of the distance between the Earth and the Sun, an intimate flyby in cosmic terms. By September, it had already developed a magnificent tail of gas and dust, a ghostly streamer that stretched 2.5 degrees across the night sky. To the naked eye, that is the width of 5 full moons, side by side. For anyone with a simple pair of binoculars and a dark sky, it was an apparition, a celestial brushstroke of ethereal light, growing more magnificent with each passing night. Next in our parade is the wild card, the surprise performer, Comet C/2025 A6 Lemon. Initial forecasts had suggested a modest, quiet performance from this particular comet. But Lemon was not one to stick to the script. In the weeks leading up to October, it began to brighten at a rate that far exceeded all predictions. It was a rapidly evolving surprise, a dynamic and unpredictable member of the ensemble. Current models now suggested it could reach 4th magnitude by late October, a brightness that would push it over the threshold of naked eye visibility under reasonably dark skies. For amateur astronomers, Lemon became a favorite, a moving target whose nightly evolution was a source of constant excitement and speculation. Serving as the warm-up act for this celestial spectacular was another comet discovered by the same survey as our interstellar visitor, C/2025 Cone Atlas. Not to be confused with its alien cousin, this more conventional comet reached its own perihelion, its closest point to the Sun, on October 8th. It provided a beautiful display in the early autumn sky, a celestial appetizer that served to whet the world's appetite for the main convergence that was to follow. Representing the periodic comets, the familiar, recurring members of our solar system's family, was 210P/Christensen, Scheduled to enter the main stage in early November, Christensen follows a predictable, well-understood orbit, returning to the inner solar system every few years. Unlike the long-period visitors who may be making their first and only recorded appearance, Christensen is a known quantity. This familiarity makes it an ideal comparison object, a scientific control group, allowing astronomers to study the truly unusual behaviors of our interstellar and long-period visitors with a reliable baseline. Extending the performance into late 2025 and early 2026 was another periodic comet, 24P/Schumacher. This object provided a sense of continuity, ensuring that as the main October convergence began to disperse, the celestial show would go on. Its extended visibility would offer crucial opportunities to study how different objects respond to the varying solar wind conditions as solar cycle 25 moves through its maximum phase and begins its slow decline. And finally, we must acknowledge a performer who had already left the stage, but whose earlier appearance was crucial for interpreting the current events. C/2024 G3 Atlas. This sun-grazing comet had provided a stunning performance earlier in the year, establishing baseline measurements for how our sun, in its awakened state, interacts with these icy bodies. Its data provided the context, the opening notes upon which this grander symphony was now being built. This is our cast, a mysterious alien, a spectacular beauty, an unpredictable surprise, and a host of supporting players, each contributing to the richness and complexity of the scene. And to appreciate the magnificent spectacle they were creating, we must understand the mechanics of their performance, the physics behind their glorious costumes, their tails. For a comet does not have one tail, but two, and they are born from entirely different physical processes, telling two different stories about the comet itself and the space it is traveling through. The first, and often the most visually prominent, is the dust tail. This is a creature of sunlight itself. As a comet nears the sun, its ices vaporize, carrying with them countless tiny particles of dust that were once locked within the nucleus. Each of these dust particles is then subjected to a gentle but relentless pressure from the photons streaming from the sunday. It is a wind made of light. This solar radiation pressure slowly pushes the dust particles away from the comet's head. Larger, heavier particles are less affected by this pressure than smaller, lighter ones, and they all continue to follow their own slightly different gravitational orbits. The result is a broad, curved, and often yellowish-white tail, a graceful arc of ancient dust spread across millions of kilometers. The second tail is a far stranger and more ethereal creation. It is the ion tail, and it is a creature of the electrical universe. As the high-energy ultraviolet light from the sun strikes the neutral atoms and molecules of gas in the comet's coma, it can knock electrons free. This process is called photoionization, and in an instant it transforms a neutral gas particle into a charged ion, and a charged particle behaves in a completely different way. It suddenly becomes responsive to magnetic fields. As the solar wind, with its own embedded magnetic field, flows past the comet, it grabs these newly created ions and sweeps them away at tremendous velocities, often far faster than the comet itself is traveling. The result is a long, straight, narrow tail that often glows with a ghostly blue light. And because it is controlled entirely by the magnetic field of the solar wind, the ion tail always points directly away from the sun, regardless of the comet's own orbital motion. This distinction is crucial. The dust tail tells us about the comet's past, its trajectory, and the size of the dust it is shedding. The ion tail, however, tells us about the present moment in the space around the comet. It is a celestial weather vane, a glowing probe showing us the precise direction and intensity of the solar wind and its magnetic field in that exact location. And with 7 such probes operating simultaneously throughout the inner solar system during the peak of a solar maximum, humanity was suddenly given an unprecedented tool. We had, in effect, a natural, 3-dimensional laboratory for studying the invisible electromagnetic weather of our cosmic neighborhood. During periods of intense solar activity, like the G3 and G4 storms of 2025, the behavior of these ion tails becomes particularly dramatic. A powerful coronal mass ejection from the Sun, a colossal blast of magnetized plasma, can literally slam into a comet's coma and sever its ion tail completely. This phenomenon is called a disconnection event, and it is a spectacular sight. It was famously captured by a NASA spacecraft in 2007, which watched as a solar eruption tore the plasma tail clean off of Comet Encke. With our current swarm approaching the Sun during the height of solar cycle 25, such disconnection events were not just possible, they were likely. Each comet's ion tail was a fuse, waiting to be lit by the Sun's fury. This is the Grand Parade. It is a convergence not just of objects, but of forces. It is a multi-layered, dynamic, and complex environment that is building toward a crescendo. The ancient prophets, when they spoke of great changes, often described them as being heralded by wonders in the heavens. The book of Joel, in the King James Bible, contains such a passage, "And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth." For the people of 2025, looking up at the autumn sky, these were not just words from an ancient text, they were a living reality. The heavens were filled with wonders, a host of celestial visitors all arriving at once. It felt less like a coincidence and more like a declaration, a performance for the entire world. It's a celestial show with front row seats available to anyone willing to simply look up, or in this case, listen in. It paints a picture in my mind of people all over the globe pausing to join this story, and I'd love to know where your seat is for this performance. Where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it as this celestial parade begins to march across your imagination? Feel free to share your city and your time in the comments. It's fascinating to think of this story echoing from a morning in one continent to an evening in another, because the stage, which we once thought held only 3 actors, was now revealed to be crowded with a full ensemble. The cosmic symphony was tuning up, and the most intense and dramatic movement was about to begin. There is an elegant and profound symmetry to our world, a principle of opposition and balance that is written into the very geometry of a sphere. Take a moment and imagine it. Imagine a single, straight line drawn from the very spot where you are right now. A line that pierces the ground beneath you, passes through the soil and rock, through the deep mantle, and through the molten iron heart of the Earth itself, continuing onward for thousands of miles until it emerges on the exact opposite side of the globe. That distant point, your perfect geographical inverse, is your antipode. For most of us, that line will end in the vast, lonely expanse of an ocean, a testament to the watery nature of our world. But sometimes, this simple exercise in geometry reveals a connection that is so intriguing, so poetically resonant, that it seems to hint at a deeper, hidden law of planetary sympathy. For the seismically tormented Kamchatka Peninsula, the place where our story's terrestrial drama began, the antipode is not some featureless patch of open ocean. The line drawn from that nexus of tectonic violence emerges remarkably close to one of the most volatile and geologically significant regions in the southern hemisphere, the Drake Passage. This is the wild, windswept strait that separates the southern tip of South America from the northernmost reaches of Antarctica, a place where 3 major tectonic plates, the Antarctic, the South American, and the Scotia plates, all converge in a complex and chaotic dance. One of the most active points on Earth sits as a polar opposite to another. This geographical curiosity has, for years, captured the attention of a small group of researchers who study what they call energy balance in the global seismic system. Their hypothesis is provocative, largely unproven by mainstream science, and yet it possesses a powerful, intuitive logic. The theory is this: that the Earth, as a single, unified body, is constantly seeking a state of equilibrium. When a truly massive earthquake occurs, an event on the scale of the July 29th Kamchatka monster, it does more than just rupture a local fault. It creates a profound stress imbalance across the entire planet. And sometimes, according to this hypothesis, the planet seeks to resolve that imbalance to restore its sacred symmetry by triggering a corresponding release of energy at its antipode. To understand this possibility, we must first consider what we know for certain. We know that the seismic waves from a great earthquake do not simply radiate outwards and then disappear. They propagate completely through and around the entire planet. The long-period surface waves in particular are vast, slow undulations of the crust itself that can circle the globe multiple times before finally dissipating into the background seismic noise. The July 29th magnitude 8.8 earthquake generated waves of this kind that were so powerful they were clearly recorded by monitoring stations on every continent, with some sensitive instruments still detecting their faint passage more than 12 hours after the initial rupture. In their journey, these waves passed through every major fault system on the planet, carrying with them not just energy, but information about the initial break. The antipodal hypothesis takes this one speculative step further. What if these waves, as they converge and focus on the point opposite the earthquake's epicenter, do more than just pass through? What if they deposit a tiny fraction of their energy, a subtle but significant stress change, into the rock on the other side of the world? What if they tune the fault systems at the antipode, subtly altering the local stress field and making a future earthquake in that region more likely? Imagine striking a large bell. The sound does not just come from the point of impact. The entire bell resonates, and the point directly opposite the strike feels a unique and focused vibration. The theory suggests that our planet might behave like such a bell. The scientific mainstream remains, with good reason, deeply skeptical of this idea. Authoritative agencies like the United States Geological Survey do not recognize antipodal triggering as a validated phenomenon. Their skepticism is rooted in the immense challenge of the energy budget. An 8.8 magnitude earthquake releases an almost incomprehensible amount of energy, approximately 10 to the power of 17 joules. But the vast majority of that energy is dissipated as heat and radiation within the first few hundred kilometers of the rupture zone. The fraction of mechanical stress that could be transmitted across 12,700 kilometers of solid and liquid earth. The maximum possible distance between 2 points on the surface is infinitesimal compared to the colossal local tectonic forces that are constantly building up along fault lines like those in the Drake Passage. And yet, the proponents of this theory point to a series of historical correlations that are difficult to dismiss entirely. They look at patterns in global earthquake catalogues, searching for these delayed antipodal pairs. They suggest that the delayed response, if it occurs, typically happens within a specific time window between 2 and 6 months after the initial event. This is the time, they theorize, that it takes for the subtle stress changes to integrate into the local tectonic system and push it towards failure. And as we move through the autumn of 2025, the Great Kamchatka earthquake of July 29th had placed our planet squarely within that predicted window. The clock, according to this hypothesis, was ticking. This idea of a sacred balance, of a planetary equilibrium that must be maintained, resonates with some of the oldest philosophical and spiritual traditions in human history. It is the principle of yin and yang, the idea that light must be balanced by shadow, action by reaction. The ancient writer of Ecclesiastes, in the King James Bible, expressed this profound sense of cosmic timing and balance in a passage that has echoed through the ages. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. Perhaps this wisdom applies not only to the lives of men and women, but to the life of the planet itself, a time to rupture in the north and a time to release in the south, a time for the Pacific Plate to dive in Kamchatka and a time for the Scotia Plate to shift in the Drake Passage. This perspective reframes the antipodal hypothesis from a fringe scientific theory into a potential physical manifestation of a metaphysical law. It suggests that the Earth is not just a collection of disconnected geological provinces, but a single, holistic system constantly striving for a state of dynamic harmony. The roar from the heart of the Earth in one hemisphere might not be a monologue, but the opening line of a dialogue, a call that awaits an answer from the other side of the world. And this brings us to an even more complex and fascinating layer of this theory. A layer that connects the Earth's inner workings back to the invisible electrical circuit we explored earlier. Some researchers who study these potential connections propose that antipodal triggering may not be a purely mechanical process. It might not be the brute force of seismic waves alone, but a more subtle and faster process involving electrical effects propagating through the Earth's highly conductive layers. This idea elegantly weds the concept of seismic energy balance with the broader electromagnetic theories we have been investigating. According to this electromagnetic variant of the theory, the Kamchatka earthquake created not just mechanical stress changes, but also massive electrical disturbances. The fracturing of rock on such a scale, a phenomenon known as piezoelectricity, can generate enormous electrical currents. These disturbances, proponents suggest, would not be confined to the local crust. They could propagate through the planet's conductive mantle and its liquid iron core at a significant fraction of the speed of light. These electrical signals could theoretically influence seismic processes in the antipodal region through the very same mechanisms proposed for space weather triggering, by altering the fluid pressure in the pores of the rock, by changing the electrical breakdown characteristics of fault materials, or by creating localized heating effects. This electromagnetic pathway could help to explain some of the shorter-term correlations that have been observed in historical earthquake catalogues, where strange seismic activity seems to appear at distant locations within hours or days of a major quake, far too quickly for a purely mechanical stress transfer to have taken place. It suggests that the Earth is not just a resonant bell, but also a spherical capacitor, a massive component in the solar system's invisible circuit, capable of transmitting information between its own poles through electrical means. And so, as we approach the critical months of October and November in 2025, a truly unprecedented natural experiment was unfolding. We had a planet that was still ringing from the colossal mechanical strike of the July earthquake in Kamchatka. The predicted time window for a mechanical antipodal response was wide open. The target region, the Drake Passage, was a known and sensitive geological hotspot, and all of this was taking place within the larger context of a solar system that was being supercharged by the fires of solar maximum and visited by a swarm of comets led by an interstellar messenger with its own enormous and unknown electromagnetic footprint. If antipodal triggering, in either its mechanical or electrical form, is a real phenomenon, then this combination of factors might have been creating the strongest test case in recorded history. The question was no longer just about what was happening in Kamchatka. The question had become global. We were forced to look at the Earth not as a map of separate continents, but as a single, integrated, and resonant sphere. The roar from the heart of the Earth on July 29th had created an imbalance, a profound asymmetry, and as the autumn days grew shorter, we were left to watch and to listen for the echo. We were left to wonder if the planet itself, in its deep and silent wisdom, would seek to restore its own sacred balance. And so we arrive at a precipice in our story. We have journeyed through the known facts. We have navigated the turbulent waters of controversial science, and we have mapped the invisible circuits that might just connect the heavens and the earth. But now, we must be willing to take one more step, a step into a realm of pure, unadulterated speculation. It is a step that requires us to temporarily suspend our disbelief and engage in a thought experiment so profound that it touches upon our deepest questions of who we are and what our place is in the universe. The great astronomer Carl Sagan, in a phrase that has become a touchstone for critical thinking, famously stated that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But we must also consider the inverse, that extraordinary evidence may, in turn, require us to consider extraordinary claims. And the evidence presented by the silent messenger 3I Atlas is, by any scientific standard, truly extraordinary. Let us venture into this realm together, with open minds, but with our feet still grounded in the strange physics we have already observed. Let us ask a question that sounds, at first, like the purest science fiction, but which grows unnervingly plausible the more we examine the details. What if 3I Atlas is not a comet at all? What if this object, born in the cradle of another star, is not a product of natural, chaotic processes, but is instead an artifact? What if it is something far more extraordinary? A vast, ancient, and exquisitely engineered machine, a self-sustaining probe designed by an intelligence we can barely imagine, whose purpose is to travel between the stars, harvesting the very energy of suns as it goes. Before you dismiss this as mere fantasy, let us revisit the evidence, not as astronomers observing a natural phenomenon, but as forensic engineers examining a piece of unknown technology. The first and most glaring clue is the almost absurd efficiency of the object. We have a solid nucleus, a core engine perhaps only 3 to 6 kilometers across, and yet it is generating an active, energetic plasma structure that is 700,000 kilometers wide. This is an efficiency ratio that beggars belief, a feat that would be the envy of any human engineer. What natural process allows a structure less than 6 kilometers wide to create and sustain an active zone more than 100,000 times larger than itself? From a purely engineering standpoint, this enormous coma begins to look less like the random outgassing of ice and more like a deliberately deployed, exquisitely designed plasma sail. Imagine a technology so advanced that it could unfurl a gossamer net of conductive materials, a net that expands to planetary dimensions while maintaining a coherent connection back to a central processing core. The physics for such a thing is not impossible. It is merely an extension of principles we are already beginning to understand. We already use magnetic fields to contain and accelerate charged particles in our own fusion experiments and plasma engines. What if 3I Atlas represents a perfected, scaled-up version of these very technologies? One designed to operate not in a laboratory, but in the natural plasma environment of a star system. In this context, the other anomalies we have observed cease to be puzzling quirks of nature and begin to look like deliberate design features. That strange forward brightening, the asymmetrical glow ahead of the nucleus, could it be the signature of an active guidance system? If the object were using precisely controlled jets of outgassing as maneuvering thrusters, perhaps to optimize its position within the solar wind or to fine-tune its energy collection, we might expect to see exactly the kind of non-uniform activity that has so puzzled astronomers. It would not be a random tumbling, but a controlled, purposeful orientation. Even its chemical composition, its richness in carbon dioxide, takes on a new and profound significance. Unlike water, which requires significant heat to sublimate from a solid to a gas, carbon dioxide can do so at the extremely low temperatures found in the outer reaches of a solar system, or even in the deep cold of interstellar space. This makes it a perfect propellant or reaction mass for a system that needs to remain operational across a vast range of stellar distances. It would allow our hypothetical machine to make minute course corrections or deploy its plasma sail long before it entered the optimal energy harvesting zone near a star. It is not just a clue to its origin. It could be the very fuel that has sustained its long journey. But to be an energy harvester, it would need more than just a large sail. It would require a mechanism for converting the raw kinetic energy of the solar wind into usable power. And here, the physics becomes truly elegant. The same natural processes that create the beautiful ion tails of comets could, in theory, be harnessed to generate electrical currents on an enormous scale. When the solar wind ionizes the neutral gas in the coma, it creates a sea of charged particles. In a natural comet, these ions are simply swept away. But what if 3I Atlas contains within its nucleus powerful, embedded magnetic field generators? Such a system could guide these newly created ions along specific pathways, funneling them into a collector. It would function like a colossal magneto-hydrodynamic generator, a device that turns the motion of a plasma directly into electrical current. Let us contemplate the power budget of such a machine. At Earth's distance from the Sun, the solar wind carries a diffuse but constant stream of energy, roughly 1/1000th of a watt for every square meter. This seems like a tiny amount, but the collection area of our hypothetical machine is not measured in square meters. Its plasma sail has a cross-section measured in hundreds of billions of square kilometers. When you run the numbers, the potential power collection is staggering, easily in the terawatt range. A single, silent object coasting through our solar system could be harvesting more energy every second than is produced by hundreds of the largest power plants on Earth combined. And what would an ancient interstellar probe do with terawatts of collected power? Perhaps it uses it to store energy for the long, dark journey between stars, maybe by creating exotic states of matter or high-energy particle configurations within its core. Or perhaps it uses it for active propulsion, allowing it to accelerate and decelerate, not just drift, turning its million-year journey into a series of controlled hops from one star system to the next. This idea is not entirely new. It echoes the concept of the von Neumann probe, a self-replicating machine that could, in theory, explore the entire galaxy by harvesting materials and energy from the star systems it encounters. 3I Atlas might not be self-replicating, but it could very well be self-sustaining. This entire line of speculation, as thrilling as it is, forces a profound challenge upon our more spiritual and faith-based conceptions of the universe. If we believe in a single, all-powerful creator, the God described in the scriptures, where does such a thing fit? Is the existence of an alien machine a product of another intelligence, a contradiction to the idea of a universe created by God? Or is it, perhaps, the ultimate confirmation of it? The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, wrote a passage that speaks directly to this. For the invisible things of him, from the creation of the world, are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. We have always understood the things that are made to mean the natural world, the stars, the mountains, the animals, the intricate beauty of life. But what if the definition is broader? What if the things that are made includes not only the things made by God's own hand, but also the things made by other intelligent hands, hands belonging to other beings who are themselves a part of that same grand creation? Is a machine, designed by an intelligence that evolved under another sun, any less a part of God's universe than a natural comet? To even consider this possibility requires a radical expansion of our theology, a shift from a human-centric view of creation to a truly cosmic one. It suggests that the divine impulse to create, to build, to explore may not be unique to humanity. Of course, there is a glaring objection to this entire hypothesis. If 3I Atlas is an artificial probe, why does it look so much like a comet? Why are we not detecting radio signals, non-thermal radiation, or other clear and obvious signatures of technology? The radio telescope searches have so far found nothing but the natural emissions expected from plasma interactions. But the absence of evidence is not necessarily the evidence of absence. A sufficiently advanced, and perhaps wise, civilization might design its probes with a principle of non-interference. They might build them to perfectly mimic natural phenomena, to pass through developing systems like our own without ever revealing their true nature. This mimicry could serve several purposes. It could be scientific, a way to observe a natural system without contaminating it with the knowledge of outside observers. It could be strategic, a form of cosmic stealth to avoid interference from other, less advanced civilizations. Or it could be protective, a deeply cautious approach to a universe that might contain hostile intelligences. In this unsettling dark forest scenario, the first rule of interstellar travel is to never ever reveal your true capabilities. From this perspective, the very naturalness of 3I Atlas, its clever disguise as an unusual comet, might be the most compelling evidence of its artificial origin. And so we are left at this precipice, facing two equally staggering possibilities. On the one hand, 3I Atlas could be a 1 in a trillion natural object, or it is a masterpiece of alien engineering, observing our world with senses we cannot detect, all while we sit here, debating whether it is anything more than a curious chunk of ice. It's a thought that is both exhilarating and deeply unsettling, and it's a conversation that shouldn't happen in a vacuum. What do you think? Is this a leap of imagination too far, or a possibility we must consider? Share your own thoughts and theories in the comments below. This is a mystery that grows richer the more minds that engage with it. The challenge it presents is not just to our science, it is a challenge to our philosophy, our faith, and our very definition of what it means to be a conscious being in this vast and perhaps very crowded universe. We have spoken of the cosmos in terms of immense, impersonal forces, the raw power of a star, the cold mechanics of geology, the elegant symmetry of a planetary system. But now, we must draw our focus inward, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, to the most complex, chaotic, and volatile system we have yet encountered: the human heart and the human mind. For if these cosmic events are indeed a form of communication, a story being told, then we are not merely the audience. We may, in fact, be a part of the message itself. This inquiry leads us down a dark and unsettling path, to a single day in September, where the trembling of the earth and the fracturing of a human soul occurred in such proximity that to not question the connection would be to ignore the very pattern this entire investigation has been revealing. Our focus shifts to the state of Utah, to the 10th of September in the year 2025. At precisely 11:27 in the morning, Mountain Daylight Time, the ground shook. Seismometers across the Wasatch Fault Zone, a long and restless seam in the Earth's crust, registered a magnitude 4.1 earthquake. Its epicenter was located 15 kilometers southeast of Salt Lake City, and it was shallow, originating just 6 kilometers deep. By all geological standards, it was an unremarkable event, a routine sigh from a region where tectonic stress builds and releases with predictable regularity. It was a tremor that fit perfectly within the normal, expected parameters of a living, breathing planet. But here, the cold comfort of rational explanation collides with the tyranny of the clock. Less than 4 hours after that tremor had subsided, in that very same state, a different kind of shockwave tore through the public consciousness. During a crowded public event, a lone individual raised a gun and attempted to assassinate a controversial political figure. The attempt failed. The shooter was apprehended quickly, but the act itself, the violent expression of a fractured and polarized society, carved yet another fault line through the human landscape. Two events, same state, same day. One born from the immense, slow pressures of geology, the other from the fast, hot pressures of human ideology and despair. There is no obvious connection, of course, except the coincidence of geography and the relentless ticking of the clock. Yet, when you are investigating the possibility of a universe that operates on principles of interconnectedness, a universe where the space around us is alive with electrical and magnetic forces, even the most skeptical observer must pause. We must ask, is it possible that the same environmental stressor that might nudge a geological fault toward release could also influence the delicate electrochemical balance of a human brain poised on the brink of violence? This is a terrifying question, for it strikes at the very heart of our most cherished beliefs about free will and human agency. To even consider this, we must first understand that the human brain is not a sealed, isolated chamber. It is the most sophisticated electromagnetic device known to exist. Your every thought, your every feeling, your every memory is a complex symphony of tiny electrical signals, of neurons firing in intricate patterns across a web of synaptic connections. Our nervous system is, in essence, a bioelectrical circuit of almost infinite complexity. And like any sensitive electrical device, it is susceptible to interference from the external electromagnetic environment. We are all, in a very real sense, biological antennae. For our entire evolutionary history, we have been bathed in the Earth's own natural magnetic field, a subtle, humming presence that some researchers believe has shaped our biology in ways we are only just beginning to understand. But what happens to such a delicately tuned instrument when the background hum becomes a roar? During a G3 geomagnetic storm, like the one that had been raging in the days leading up to September 10th, the Earth's magnetic field does not just hum, it screams. It fluctuates wildly, it is compressed and stretched, and it induces currents not just in the ground, but in the atmosphere, in our oceans, and potentially within us. Let us be absolutely clear. This is not a theory of mind control. A solar storm cannot implant a thought in a person's head. It cannot write a command in their consciousness. The mechanism, if it exists, is far more subtle and insidious. It is not about controlling thoughts, it is about influencing states. Think of it as a form of psychological static, a pervasive low-level irritation that can shorten tempers, lower impulse control, increase anxiety, and amplify paranoid ideations. For a stable, well-adjusted individual, this static might manifest as a day of feeling inexplicably irritable or on edge. But for an individual who is already standing on a psychological precipice, an individual whose mind is already a tinderbox of grievance, ideology, and instability, this pervasive environmental stressor might just be the spark that ignites the flame. The storm does not create the killer. It may simply provide the perfect atmospheric conditions for the killer's darkest impulses to finally break free. Now, let us look again at the events in Utah through this unsettling new lens. The political climate of 2025 was already one of extreme tension. The source document notes that scientific measures of public polarization had reached levels not seen since the era of the American Civil War. The social fabric was already stretched thin, humming with its own kind of stress. The individual who attempted the assassination did not exist in a vacuum. He was a product of this environment, his mind already shaped by the divisive rhetoric and social fragmentation of his time. The fault lines in his own psyche were already loaded, and into this environment of human and geological tension comes the external stressor. The lingering effects of the G3 storm, the recurring high-speed streams from the sun, were creating an ongoing electromagnetic turbulence. Is it so implausible to suggest that this turbulence could have acted as a common catalyst? That the same force which provided the final, tiny nudge to a shallow, 6-kilometer deep geological fault could also have provided the final, electrochemical nudge to a deeply troubled human mind? The earthquake and the assassination attempt become, in this view, not two separate events, but two different expressions of a single, overburdened system, a planet and its people, both trembling under a period of extraordinary stress. This possibility forces us to confront one of the oldest and most difficult questions in all of theology and philosophy, the question of free will. If our very moods and impulses, the chemical tides within our brains, can be influenced by the magnetic field of a star 93 million miles away, are we truly the masters of our own fates? Where does cosmic influence end and personal responsibility begin? The ancient scriptures, for all their poetry, offer a remarkably nuanced and psychologically astute perspective on this very dilemma. In the Epistle of James, in the King James Bible, it is written, "But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed." This short verse contains a profound wisdom. It separates the external influence from the internal choice. We are enticed. We are drawn away by forces outside of ourselves. This could be a social pressure, a personal grievance, or perhaps even the pervasive static of a geomagnetic storm. The storm is the enticement. But the yielding to that temptation, the final, catastrophic act, comes from what the text calls a man's own lust, his own internal desires, fears, and brokenness. This framework does not absolve the individual of responsibility. It preserves human agency. The universe might create the conditions for the storm, but we choose how we navigate the waves. The shooter in Utah is no less culpable for his actions. But this perspective places his tragic individual failure within a far larger and more frightening context, suggesting that in certain cosmic seasons, the temptations to our darkest natures may become more powerful, the enticements more difficult to resist. And the pattern was not confined to a single man in a single state. As the source material notes, the period of the G3 storm in mid-September coincided with a notable spike in social unrest in several regions around the world. Global protest movements, which had been simmering for months, suddenly erupted with new intensity. The underlying social grievances, the political and economic tinder, had long been in place. But the timing of the widespread demonstrations, the sudden synchronization of outrage across multiple continents during the exact days of the most intense geomagnetic activity is, at the very least, a correlation that warrants serious investigation. It suggests once again that the state of the human collective may be intimately and invisibly tied to the state of the planetary environment we inhabit. And this leads us to the final and most chilling layer of this speculation. A layer that connects the chaos on Earth back to the silent, watching presence of our interstellar visitor. In the last chapter, we dared to imagine that 3I Atlas might be an artifact, a machine. We speculated that it could be harvesting energy, a passive and silent process. But now, we must ask an even darker question. What if its purpose is not passive? What if the effects we are witnessing are not accidental side effects of its presence? What if the psychological static, the nudging of geological faults, is not a bug but a feature? What if this ancient, intelligent probe is conducting a systematic survey, not just of our planet's geology, but of its dominant species? What if it is deliberately modulating the local electromagnetic environment to test our breaking points? How does this civilization respond when its planet is stressed? How do its individual members behave when their own minds are subjected to subtle environmental pressure? From this horrifying perspective, the political violence in Utah ceases to be just a human tragedy. It becomes a data point. The global protests are no longer just a cry for justice. They are a readout on a planetary stress test. We would be, in effect, laboratory subjects in an experiment so vast and so cold that it is utterly beyond our moral comprehension. And so, the cosmic drama, which began in the distant heavens and the deep earth, has finally found its most intimate and disturbing stage. The landscape of human consciousness. The real battlefield may not be on a fault line or in the magnetosphere, but inside our own skulls. We see the chaos in our world, the rising tides of anger and division, and we attribute them to politics, to economics, to ideology. But what if the roots of our modern madness are deeper still? What if the battlefield of our time is not just between nations or ideologies, but between the fragile, emergent consciousness of humanity and the ancient, powerful, and utterly alien forces of the cosmos itself? The question is no longer simply what is happening out there, but how it is affecting us in here. And so, we arrive at the heart of the storm. We have traced the separate threads of this cosmic tapestry: the sun's fire, the earth's fragility, the messenger's strangeness, the gathering swarm, the invisible circuits, and the echoes in our own souls. Now, in the final, fateful weeks of October 2025, all of these threads converge. They are no longer separate storylines, but a single, tightly woven cord of immense and unknown tension. This is the nexus point, the moment toward which all the signs and portents have been pointing. It is a convergence of celestial mechanics so rare, so perfectly orchestrated, that it feels less like a product of random chance and more like a deliberate, cosmic appointment. The month of October unfolds not as a series of separate days, but as a countdown, a slow, deliberate crescendo building toward a moment of profound significance. The sky itself becomes a stage, and humanity, for the first time in a generation, finds a reason to look up in collective awe and trepidation. The air is charged not just with the electromagnetic fury of the sun, but with a palpable sense of anticipation. We have entered a period of vigil, a time of watching and waiting, as the universe prepares to reveal something of its true nature. The performance begins around October 19th. As the world turns toward the 21st, Comet Swan, the spectacular beauty of our celestial parade, makes its most intimate approach to Earth. At a distance of just 0.26 astronomical units, it becomes a magnificent spectacle in the night sky. Its tail, already a ghostly streamer 5 full moon widths long, blossoms into its full glory. For those who venture away from the glare of city lights, it is a sight that transcends science and touches something primal within us. It is a brushstroke of divine artistry, a reminder of the sublime and ephemeral beauty that haunts the darkness between worlds. It is the opening act, a vision of grace and elegance before the main event's raw power is fully unleashed. Then, on October 21st, comes the symbolic heart of the convergence. A new moon. Astronomically, this is a simple alignment. The moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, its illuminated side turned away from us, rendering it invisible in our sky. But in the language of archetypes and ancient wisdom, a new moon has always been a moment of immense power. It is a time of reset, of new beginnings, of a symbolic death that precedes a rebirth. It is the dark, fertile soil from which new intentions can grow. This particular new moon occurs with the sun positioned against the backdrop of the constellation Virgo, a constellation associated for millennia with themes of harvesting, of purification, and of the careful preparation required for a new season. This alignment, the Earth, Moon, and Sun in a perfect, straight line, creates what some researchers have called a reset configuration. It happens at the precise moment that Comet Swan is at its closest, while Comet Lemon is surging toward its unexpected peak brightness, and while the entire system is being supercharged by the energies of solar maximum. It is a moment of profound celestial syzygy, a perfect alignment of both physical bodies and symbolic meanings. The universe, it seems, is providing a moment of darkness, a quiet pause, a deep collective breath before the true climax. Throughout these days, the sun, the great conductor of this orchestra, does not rest. The peak of solar cycle 25 is not a single day, but a season of fire. The far side of the sun, hidden from our direct view, is just as active as the side we can see. The solar wind continues to gust and flow. The invisible circuit of the solar system is humming at maximum load, and the entire stage is bathed in the turbulent energies of a star at the height of its power. This is the charged atmosphere in which the final act will unfold. And then comes the main event, the moment for which our silent messenger has traveled for millions of years. On October 30th, 3I Atlas reaches perihelion. It makes its closest approach to the Sun at a distance of roughly 1.4 astronomical units. While this is still well outside Earth's orbit, comfortably far from our world, this is the moment of its greatest trial and its greatest revelation. At this point, the object and its impossibly vast coma will be subjected to the most intense solar heating and the most ferocious solar wind it will ever encounter. This is the moment when the messenger from the interstellar cold finally meets the full fury of the fire. The predictions from our astrophysicists are almost beyond belief. As the exotic ices of its nucleus are vaporized at their maximum rate, the coma, already half the diameter of the Sun, is expected to swell even further. Some models suggest it could expand to a diameter exceeding 1.2 million kilometers, creating a temporary, ghostly structure in our solar system larger than the Sun itself. It is at this moment that the object will release the richest and most detailed information about its alien chemistry. It is a moment of scientific apotheosis. And so, humanity watches. This is our vigil. Across the globe, in the cold, clear nights of late October, the great eyes of our civilization are all turned toward this cosmic drama. On remote mountaintops in Chile and Hawaii, the giant mirrors of our ground-based telescopes stare into the darkness, gathering every possible photon. In the silent vacuum of space, the James Webb and Hubble Space Telescopes pivot their gaze, their sensitive instruments prepared to dissect the light from these visitors. Reading their chemical signatures, like ancient scrolls, our radio telescopes are not looking, but listening, tuning into the hiss and crackle of the plasma interactions, hoping to discern some pattern, some signal in the electromagnetic noise. This is the vigil of science, a global, coordinated effort to witness and record every detail of this unprecedented convergence. But there is another vigil taking place, a quieter, more personal one. It is the vigil of ordinary men and women standing in their backyards, their binoculars trained on the faint, beautiful smear of Comet Swan. It is the sense of wonder in a child's eyes as they see a visitor from the outer solar system for the first time. It is the quiet contemplation of millions, feeling the weight of these celestial events, sensing, on some deep, intuitive level, that this is not just another news story. It is a moment that matters. It is the psychological impact of a sky that is no longer static and predictable, but alive, dynamic, and filled with wonders. This is the vigil of the human spirit. And as we all watch, scientist and citizen alike, all the theories and speculations we have explored on this journey converge into a single, terrifying, and exhilarating point of tension. The invisible circuit of the solar system is now at maximum load. The power source is at full fury, and a host of new, powerful, and unpredictable components have been plugged in, creating an electrical environment of unprecedented complexity. Will the circuit hold, or will it blow a fuse somewhere in the system? The terrestrial echo we contemplated, the antipodal response to the Great July earthquake, now faces its most likely moment of becoming. The 2 to 6 month window is wide open. The Earth's own internal stresses are still humming, and now the entire planet is being subjected to the peak of the external cosmic stress. If there was ever a time for the planet to seek its sacred balance, to answer the roar from Kamchatka with a corresponding roar from the Drake Passage, this is it. And the most radical speculation of all, the idea of 3i Atlas as a machine, now faces its ultimate test. If it is an energy harvester, then this is its moment of maximum harvest. As it plunges through the densest regions of the Sun's power, its systems will be operating at full capacity. What side effects, what electromagnetic wake will such a process leave on the already turbulent solar wind? Could its operation be the final, unpredictable variable that pushes other systems, including our own planets, past their breaking point? This, then, is the nexus point. It is not a prediction of doom, but a recognition of a moment of supreme potential. All the known forces of nature and all our most daring speculations are converging on a single week in the calendar. The word apocalypse, in its original Greek, does not mean the end of the world. It means an unveiling, a revelation. The great October convergence of 2025 is perhaps just such a moment. It is an opportunity for a profound unveiling of the true interconnected nature of our universe. The vigil we are keeping is not a watch for the end, but a watch for a new beginning, a new understanding. And so, we stand on the precipice, on the eve of October 30th. The celestial parade is in full procession. The symphony is reaching its final, thunderous crescendo. The sun is roaring, the comets are singing their plasma songs, and the Earth is listening, its own deep energies humming in response. The universe is holding its breath, and so are we. The known and the unknown are about to meet in a spectacle of light and energy, and what is revealed in that moment may echo for generations to come. The great convergence has passed. The 30th of October has come and gone. 3I Atlas, the silent messenger, has made its closest approach to the fire, and in a blaze of scientific discovery has begun its long, slow journey back out into the cold and the dark from whence it came. Comet Swan has faded from our skies, its beautiful, ephemeral tail now a receding memory. The celestial stage, for a brief and spectacular season so impossibly crowded, is beginning to empty. The thunder of the cosmic symphony has subsided, and what is left behind is a silence, a deep and resonant quiet that is somehow more profound than the noise that preceded it. The show is over. But the story, the real story, has only just begun, for the true revelation of these events was never going to be written in the sky. The ultimate meaning was not to be found in the spectral analysis of a comet's coma, nor in the seismic readings of a trembling Earth, nor in the magnetosphere's frantic dance. These were all but reflections. The great and terrible beauty of the heavens in the autumn of 2025 was, in the end, a mirror, a vast cosmic mirror held up to the face of humanity, and in it we were forced to see ourselves, our light and our shadow, our infinite potential and our terrifying fragility reflected back at us on a scale that we could no longer ignore. The revelation was not external, it was internal. The apocalypse, the great unveiling, happened not in the world, but in the consciousness of those who were willing to watch and to listen. We looked at the furious, chaotic, and unimaginably powerful surface of the sun, and we saw a reflection of our own collective passions, our own untapped creative energies, and our own terrible capacity for destructive rage. We felt the deep and violent trembling of our own planet, and we were forced to acknowledge our own profound vulnerability, the fact that the very ground beneath our civilization is not as solid as we pretend it to be. And we gazed upon the utter strangeness of the interstellar visitor, a true alien in every sense of the word, and we were confronted with the vast, unacknowledged alienness within ourselves, the strange, shadowy parts of our own psyche that we deny and project upon others. The universe did not send us a message. The universe was the message, and the message was, and has always been, know thyself. This is the great archetypal pattern, a story as old as consciousness itself. It is the story of death and rebirth. It is a fundamental principle of nature and a foundational process of the human soul. We see it everywhere, in every cycle of life. A seed must fall into the ground and die, its hard outer shell rotting away, before the new life within it can sprout and reach for the Sunday. A great forest fire, in all its terrifying destruction, clears away the dead undergrowth and returns vital nutrients to the soil, creating the fertile conditions for a new, stronger forest to rise from the ashes. In our own bodies, individual cells must constantly die to make way for new ones, a perpetual cycle of dissolution and renewal that is the very definition of being alive. The cosmos, in late 2025, provided humanity with a collective, archetypal fire. Our civilization, as we have explored, had reached a crossroads. We were, and are, a world struggling under the weight of its own unresolved conflicts, its environmental crises, its social fragmentations, its technological disruptions. We were a forest choked with the dead wood of old ideologies, old hatreds, and unsustainable patterns of being. The convergence in the heavens, with its attendant chaos on earth, was not a punishment. It was a clearing. It was a force of dissolution, a necessary breaking down of old certainties and rigid structures, both in the world and, more importantly, in our minds. In the Gospel of John, in the King James translation, there is a verse of profound natural and spiritual wisdom. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. The chaos of 2025 was the falling of the seed into the ground. It was the necessary death required for the possibility of a greater harvest. But this process of rebirth is not passive. It is not gentle. It demands from us the most difficult work of all, the conscious and courageous integration of our own shadow. The concept of the shadow, first articulated by the great psychologist Carl Jung, refers to all the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, repressed, and refused to acknowledge. It is our hidden capacity for selfishness, for cruelty, for greed, for ignorance, for all the destructive impulses that we would prefer not to see in ourselves. Because we refuse to see this darkness within, we do not eliminate it. We simply project it outward. We see it everywhere, in others. Our political opponents, our ideological enemies, the people from another tribe or another nation, they become the living embodiment of the very darkness we cannot face in ourselves. They become demonic caricatures, and in fighting them, we feel righteous, never realizing that we are fighting a distorted reflection of our own unhealed soul. The extreme social polarization we witnessed, the acts of violence born from desperation and hatred, were the symptoms of a collective shadow running rampant. The cosmic drama did not create this shadow, but it illuminated it. The sheer amoral power of the sun, the violent indifference of the Earth's tectonic plates, the utter alienness of the visitor. These things stripped away our comforting illusions of control and forced us to confront the raw, untamed, and often terrifying nature of reality, both outside and inside of us. The mirror was held up, and in it we saw the monster. And the bravest among us, the ones who were truly watching, were forced to admit that the monster's eyes looked disturbingly like our own. This is the beginning of true wisdom. Shadow integration is not about becoming evil. It is the very opposite. It is the act of taking responsibility for our own capacity for darkness, of withdrawing our projections from others, and of consciously choosing the light, not out of naive innocence, but out of the hard-won wisdom that comes from having looked into the abyss of our own potential without flinching. It is the understanding that the line between good and evil runs not between nations or political parties, but down the center of every single human heart. And this is the true revelation, the great unveiling. It is the profound and life-altering shift from a victim consciousness to a creator consciousness. For as long as we project our shadow, we are victims. Things are always happening to us. We are the helpless pawns of corrupt politicians, of unjust economic systems, of malevolent cosmic forces. But when we withdraw that projection, when we take responsibility for our own inner state, we reclaim our power. We realize that while we may not control the events that happen in the world, we have absolute dominion over our response to those events. This is the radical responsibility that the source text spoke of. It is the understanding that our true purpose is not to curse the storm, but to learn how to build a better boat. It does not ultimately matter then whether the solar storm directly triggered the earthquake. It does not matter if 3I Atlas was a natural comet or an artificial machine. Those are questions of the physical world. The true revelation lies in what the convergence of those events revealed to us about ourselves. What mattered was that in a moment of profound cosmic and terrestrial chaos, we were given an undeniable opportunity to see our own patterns of fear, of blame, of projection, and of meaning-making laid bare. We were given a choice: to continue as victims of a chaotic universe, or to become conscious participants in our own evolution. This choice leads to the final and most difficult stage of the rebirth process: the application of what the source text calls fierce compassion and forgiveness. Forgiveness, in this context, is not a sentimental or weak act. It is not about excusing harmful behavior or pretending that injustices have not occurred. It is a pragmatic and powerful act of spiritual hygiene. It is the conscious decision to release the toxic, burning coal of resentment that we hold in our own hands, a coal that ultimately harms us far more than it harms the person at whom we are throwing it. It is the only way to break the endless, repeating cycle of hurt and retaliation. And this forgiveness must, perhaps most importantly, be extended to ourselves for our own ignorance, our own mistakes, our own past participation in the cycles of shadow projection. This is the great work that is born from the great celestial fire. The cosmic show may be over, but its reflection remains, imprinted upon our collective consciousness. The fire has cleared the dead wood. We are now standing in the fertile, ash-covered ground of a new possibility. The revelation from the heavens was not a set of answers. It was a single, soul-shattering question, whispered to every human being who was willing to listen. Now that you have seen the magnificent, terrifying, and interconnected nature of the cosmos, and now that you have seen the deep, shadowy, and creative nature of your own soul, what will you choose, in this moment, to create? The story has now moved from the stars and into our own hearts, which is where the most meaningful and consequential journeys always, and truly, unfold. The great convergence has passed. The 30th of October has come and gone. 3i Atlas, the silent messenger, has made its closest approach to the fire, and in a blaze of scientific discovery has begun its long, slow journey back out into the cold and the dark from whence it came. Comet Swan has faded from our skies, its beautiful ephemeral tail now a receding memory. The celestial stage, for a brief and spectacular season so impossibly crowded, is beginning to empty. The thunder of the cosmic symphony has subsided, and what is left behind is a silence, a deep and resonant quiet that is somehow more profound than the noise that preceded it. The show is over. But the story, the real story, has only just begun, for the true revelation of these events was never going to be written in the sky. The ultimate meaning was not to be found in the spectral analysis of a comet's coma, nor in the seismic readings of a trembling Earth, nor in the magnetosphere's frantic dance. These were all but reflections. The great and terrible beauty of the heavens in the autumn of 2025 was, in the end, a mirror, a vast, cosmic mirror held up to the face of humanity. And in it, we were forced to see ourselves, our light and our shadow, our infinite potential and our terrifying fragility, reflected back at us on a scale that we could no longer ignore. The revelation was not external, it was internal. The apocalypse, the great unveiling, happened not in the world, but in the consciousness of those who were willing to watch and to listen. We looked at the furious, chaotic, and unimaginably powerful surface of the sun, and we saw a reflection of our own collective passions, our own untapped creative energies, and our own terrible capacity for destructive rage. We felt the deep and violent trembling of our own planet, and we were forced to acknowledge our own profound vulnerability, the fact that the very ground beneath our civilization is not as solid as we pretend it to be. And we gazed upon the utter strangeness of the interstellar visitor, a true alien in every sense of the word, and we were confronted with the vast, unacknowledged alienness within ourselves, the strange, shadowy parts of our own psyche that we deny and project upon others. The universe did not send us a message. The universe was the message. And the message was, and has always been, know thyself. This is the great archetypal pattern, a story as old as consciousness itself. It is the story of death and rebirth. It is a fundamental principle of nature and a foundational process of the human soul. We see it everywhere, in every cycle of life. A seed must fall into the ground and die, its hard outer shell rotting away, before the new life within it can sprout and reach for the Sunday. A great forest fire, in all its terrifying destruction, clears away the dead undergrowth and returns vital nutrients to the soil, creating the fertile conditions for a new, stronger forest to rise from the ashes. In our own bodies, individual cells must constantly die to make way for new ones, a perpetual cycle of dissolution and renewal that is the very definition of being alive. The cosmos, in late 2025, provided humanity with a collective, archetypal fire. Our civilization, as we have explored, had reached a crossroads. We were, and are, a world struggling under the weight of its own unresolved conflicts, its environmental crises, its social fragmentations, its technological disruptions. We were a forest choked with the dead wood of old ideologies, old hatreds, and unsustainable patterns of being. The convergence in the heavens, with its attendant chaos on earth, was not a punishment, it was a clearing. It was a force of dissolution, a necessary breaking down of old certainties and rigid structures, both in the world and, more importantly, in our minds. In the Gospel of John, in the King James translation, there is a verse of profound natural and spiritual wisdom. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone, but if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. The chaos of 2025 was the falling of the seed into the ground. It was the necessary death required for the possibility of a greater harvest. But this process of rebirth is not passive, it is not gentle. It demands from us the most difficult work of all, the conscious and courageous integration of our own shadow. The concept of the shadow, first articulated by the great psychologist Carl Jung, refers to all the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, repressed, and refused to acknowledge. It is our hidden capacity for selfishness, for cruelty, for greed, for ignorance, for all the destructive impulses that we would prefer not to see in ourselves. Because we refuse to see this darkness within, we do not eliminate it. We simply project it outward. We see it everywhere, in others, our political opponents, our ideological enemies, the people from another tribe or another nation. They become the living embodiment of the very darkness we cannot face in ourselves. They become demonic caricatures, and in fighting them, we feel righteous, never realizing that we are fighting a distorted reflection of our own unhealed soul. The extreme social polarization we witnessed, the acts of violence born from desperation and hatred, were the symptoms of a collective shadow running rampant. The cosmic drama did not create this shadow, but it illuminated it. The sheer amoral power of the sun, the violent indifference of the Earth's tectonic plates, the utter alienness of the visitor, these things stripped away our comforting illusions of control and forced us to confront the raw, untamed, and often terrifying nature of reality, both outside and inside of us. The mirror was held up, and in it we saw the monster. And the bravest among us, the ones who were truly watching, were forced to admit that the monster's eyes looked disturbingly like our own. This is the beginning of true wisdom. Shadow integration is not about becoming evil. It is the very opposite. It is the act of taking responsibility for our own capacity for darkness, of withdrawing our projections from others, and of consciously choosing the light, not out of naive innocence, but out of the hard-won wisdom that comes from having looked into the abyss of our own potential without flinching. It is the understanding that the line between good and evil runs not between nations or political parties, but down the center of every single human heart. And this is the true revelation, the great unveiling. It is the profound and life-altering shift from a victim consciousness to a creator consciousness. For as long as we project our shadow, we are victims. Things are always happening to us. We are the helpless pawns of corrupt politicians, of unjust economic systems, of malevolent cosmic forces. But when we withdraw that projection, when we take responsibility for our own inner state, we reclaim our power. We realize that while we may not control the events that happen in the world, we have absolute dominion over our response to those events. This is the radical responsibility that the source text spoke of. It is the understanding that our true purpose is not to curse the storm, but to learn how to build a better boat. It does not ultimately matter then whether the solar storm directly triggered the earthquake. It does not matter if 3I Atlas was a natural comet or an artificial machine. Those are questions of the physical world. The true revelation lies in what the convergence of those events revealed to us about ourselves. What mattered was that in a moment of profound cosmic and terrestrial chaos, we were given an undeniable opportunity to see our own patterns of fear, of blame, of projection, and of meaning-making laid bare. We were given a choice to continue as victims of a chaotic universe, or to become conscious participants in our own evolution. This choice leads to the final and most difficult stage of the rebirth process, the application of what the source text calls fierce compassion and forgiveness. Forgiveness, in this context, is not a sentimental or weak act. It is not about excusing harmful behavior or pretending that injustices have not occurred. It is a pragmatic and powerful act of spiritual hygiene. It is the conscious decision to release the toxic, burning coal of resentment that we hold in our own hands, a coal that ultimately harms us far more than it harms the person at whom we are throwing it. It is the only way to break the endless, repeating cycle of hurt and retaliation. And this forgiveness must, perhaps most importantly, be extended to ourselves for our own ignorance, our own mistakes, our own past participation in the cycles of shadow projection. This is the great work that is born from the great celestial fire. The cosmic show may be over, but its reflection remains, imprinted upon our collective consciousness. The fire has cleared the dead wood. We are now standing in the fertile, ash-covered ground of a new possibility. The revelation from the heavens was not a set of answers. It was a single, soul-shattering question, whispered to every human being who was willing to listen. Now that you have seen the magnificent, terrifying, and interconnected nature of the cosmos, and now that you have seen the deep, shadowy, and creative nature of your own soul, what will you choose, in this moment, to create? The story has now moved from the stars and into our own hearts, which is where the most meaningful and consequential journeys always, and truly, unfold. We stand now on the far shore of our journey, looking back at the cosmic storm through which we have passed. The year 2025 is now a chapter in history, a time when the heavens and the earth spoke in a language of fire and thunder, of celestial wonders and terrestrial upheaval. The great convergence is over. The interstellar messenger has rounded the sun and is now receding, its silent, alien form dissolving back into the infinite dark from which it came. The celestial parade has dispersed, its members continuing on their own lonely paths through the solar system. The sun's fury has begun to soften, its 11-year fever starting to break as it moves past its peak. And the earth, having roared and trembled, has settled into a new and watchful quiet. The drama has concluded, the curtain has fallen, and we, the audience, are left in the profound silence that follows, a silence filled with the echoes of what we have witnessed. This entire investigation, this long and winding journey from scientific fact to speculative wonder, began with three fundamental questions. They are the same questions that humanity has whispered into the darkness since the first moment we looked up at the star-filled sky and became aware of our own fleeting existence. They are the questions that lie at the root of all our philosophies, all our religions, and all our science. In the face of the magnificent and terrifying spectacle of 2025, these questions have returned to us with a new and undeniable urgency. And now, having passed through the fire, we find ourselves in a place where an answer, not of fact but of profound understanding, may finally be possible. Why are we here? What is our purpose? And what, in the end, is our destiny? The answer to the first question, why are we here, is found not in our complexity, but in our simplicity. It is found in the single, most miraculous attribute of our existence, the simple fact that we are aware. For billions of years, the universe unfolded in a state of magnificent, unobserved solitude. Stars were born and died in silent, cataclysmic explosions, their light traveling for eons across a void that had no eyes to see it. Galaxies collided in a slow gravitational dance of unimaginable scale, a ballet with no audience. Our own moon, a silent, sterile pearl, was formed in a cataclysm of fire and rock, and for billions of years it hung in the sky of a world where nothing looked up to behold its beauty. The universe was a masterpiece painted in an empty room. It was a symphony played in a deaf hall. And then, on this small, wet, rocky world, something extraordinary happened. Matter, through some process of alchemy we still do not understand, folded in upon itself and woke up. Life emerged, and with it, eventually, came consciousness. An eye opened, an ear began to listen, a mind began to wonder. For the first time, the universe had a witness. This is the answer. This is why we are here. We are the observers. We are the part of the cosmos that has been gifted with the astonishing ability to behold the rest. Without us, and other conscious beings like us, should they exist, the universe is a purely physical phenomenon, a collection of mathematical laws playing themselves out in an empty void. But with us, it becomes a creation. It becomes a story. Our existence, our simple, fragile awareness, is the act that breathes meaning into the cold equations of physics. We are the universe's way of knowing itself. The first chapter of Genesis in the King James Bible begins with the iconic declaration, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." We have always understood this as the creation of physical light, of photons, but perhaps its deeper meaning is the creation of the light of consciousness, the very light of awareness that illuminates the material world and gives it significance. We are that light. Our presence here is the fulfillment of that first ancient command. We are here to witness the glory of the firmament, to stand in awe of the sun's fire, to feel the deep and terrible power of our own world, and to marvel at the silent messengers that pass through our celestial home. Our existence is an act of cosmic witnessing. That is our fundamental reason for being. But this answer, as profound as it is incomplete. For observation is not a passive act. It naturally leads to the second, more active question. What is our purpose? If we are here to observe, what are we meant to do with what we see? The answer to this lies in the very nature of the human mind. We are not mere recording devices. We are not simply cameras, capturing images of the cosmos. We are interpreters. We are translators. We are, in our very essence, meaning-making machines. The universe speaks in a raw, powerful, and often chaotic language. It speaks in the language of quantum mechanics and general relativity, of supernovas and black holes, of tectonic shifts and solar flares. This is a language of pure energy and information, devoid of inherent narrative or moral significance. Our purpose is to be the great translators. Our purpose is to take this raw, untamed data of existence and to weave it into a tapestry of meaning. We are the ones who look at a random scattering of stars and see a hunter, a bear, a queen. We are the ones who hear the mathematical ratios in the vibrations of a string and call it music. We are the ones who feel the chaotic surge of electrochemical signals in our brains and call it love. We are the ones who witness a terrifying convergence of cosmic events and, instead of simply cowering in fear, embark on a long and complex journey to try and understand what it all means. This is our sacred and unique task. Our purpose is to create meaning. The events of 2025 were a perfect illustration of this purpose in action. The universe presented us with chaos, a storm, an earthquake, a strange visitor. And what did we do? We did not simply record the data. We began to tell a story. We sought patterns. We formulated theories, from the most rigorously scientific to the most wildly speculative. We debated. We argued. We wondered. We took the raw, terrifying power of the cosmos and began the process of integrating it into our understanding, into our narrative of reality. This is our function. We are the consciousness of the universe, and our purpose is to provide that universe with a story about itself. This is the ultimate act of radical responsibility. We are not the victims of a meaningless universe. We are the active creators of a meaningful one. The meaning is not given to us. It is our job to create it. And this leads us, finally, to the third and most profound question. What is our destiny? If we are here to observe, and if our purpose is to create meaning from our observations, then what is the ultimate endpoint of this process? What is the final chapter of our story? The answer is that there is no final chapter. Our destiny is not a destination at which we will one day arrive. It is a role that we are invited to consciously embody. It is the synthesis of our existence and our purpose. If the universe provides the raw materials and we provide the meaning, then our destiny is to become conscious partners in the ongoing act of creation itself. Our destiny is to become co-creators. This is not a statement of hubris or arrogance. It is a statement of ultimate responsibility. To be a co-creator means to understand that our thoughts, our intentions, and our actions are not isolated events. They are creative acts that ripple outwards, shaping the reality we experience. When we choose to create meaning based on fear, on division, on the projection of our shadow, we co-create a world of conflict and suffering. When we choose to create meaning based on curiosity, on compassion, on the integration of our shadow, we co-create a world of connection and growth. The cosmic events of 2025 were a powerful catalyst, a global initiation that forced us to see the power of our own meaning-making abilities. They showed us that the world we inhabit is in large part a reflection of the stories we choose to tell ourselves. Our destiny is to grow into that divine image, to become beings whose primary function is the conscious and loving creation of meaning and beauty in a universe that has gifted us with the raw materials to do so. This journey we've taken together may be ending, but the real work, the real act of creation, is just beginning for all of us. If this exploration has resonated with you, if it has sparked a sense of wonder or a new perspective, consider sharing it with someone who you think might also be ready to ask these questions. By liking this video, you help it reach more people, and in doing so, help grow this community of observers and meaning makers. The great cosmic journey continues, but now we walk it with open eyes, knowing that the path ahead is one that we ourselves must help to create. Thank you for being a part of it. The cosmic journey, then, does not end here. The events of 2025 were not a conclusion, they were a commencement, an invitation, an awakening. The universe, in its magnificent and terrible glory, has shown us the scale of the stage upon which we live, and in doing so, it has revealed to us our true role within this grand cosmic play. We are the observers, here to witness the unfolding masterpiece. We are the meaning makers, here to translate its raw power into a story of wonder and significance. And we are the co-creators, destined not to simply read the story of the universe, but to take up the pen and help to write the next chapter. The sky has changed, and so have we. The great cosmic journey continues, but now we walk it with open eyes, knowing that the path ahead is one that we ourselves must help to create.